Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about strengthening for knee arthritis. Strengthening to support those knees if you have knee arthritis. This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line. Okay, so you have knee arthritis, and it's probably really annoying because it flares up so easily. So you look up what to do, and everybody says, well, you need to strengthen your glutes. Or, well, occasionally you may hear, well, you need to strengthen your knees. Well, yes and no, maybe. More likely the glutes. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So there are a couple of things to be mindful of when you have knee arthritis. And I should actually even qualify that even more. I'm talking osteoarthritis. So I am not talking gouty arthritis and I am not talking rheumatoid arthritis, because rheumatoid arthritis, if you are in a flare, you need to keep in mind of that flare, and doing exercise really can make it a lot worse. Rheumatoid arthritis being systemic, doing motion could make you feel better a little bit, but you really want to make sure that you're really honing in on what you're doing for the whole systemic, whole body aspect of that. So I'm strictly talking osteoarthritis because that's what I really specialize in. So a couple of things to be mindful of. Now I say be mindful of because I don't say it's all or nothing. I don't say always do this thing and never do that thing. Be mindful of it. So be mindful of loading painful knees, and be mindful of your positioning, and be mindful to go slow. It is a slower process than you would like. Okay? So loading painful knees. Loading means putting weight and pressure through those painful knees. So one of the most common things you will see when you ask in these Facebook groups, what should I do to strengthen my glutes? People will say do squats. Other people will say do lunges. Those are really loading your knees, because think, oh, it adds a lot of pressure to my knees. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. You need to be mindful of it. And if you're listening to this episode, you're probably in quite a bit of pain. It's not a no pain, no gain situation. It's not the more pain you have, the more it's working. And it's not the more painful you are right now, the quicker the pain's going to go away. I've always said this to my clients, and I've always said this to my patients and my clients. Don't poke the bear. The bear is angry. If you poke the bear, you make him angrier. What do you do with an angry bear? You back the F off. Don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear. So if you have painful knees, if you are in a flare with your arthritis, don't poke the bear. Back off for right now, and then, go back to what you were doing when they're not so angry. Okay, so that means don't load the painful knees so much. Don't try and force a squat. Don't try and force a lunge, because somebody on the internet told you that squats and lunges are the best thing for glutes and that's what you have to do. They may be the best. I don't know. That's a very subjective comment to make. They're definitely not the only way to strengthen your glutes. And then be mindful of your positioning. So what do I mean by that? I mean the position that your leg is in when you're doing your strength workouts. So be mindful if your knees are knocking toward each other, or if you're bow-legged and they're really forced outward. You want to keep, as best as you can, your kneecap over your second toe when you're doing standing exercises, when you're doing exercises that is that you're moving your leg. Okay, so if you're doing a standing exercise and your knee is dropping in towards your other one and you're going knock-kneed, you need to rotate your hip to pull your kneecap over your second toe. And with that, you need to make sure that your toes aren't pointed outward and walking duck-footed. You also need to make sure that you're not pigeon-toed. Your toes need to be directly straight and then your kneecap needs to follow it. So be mindful of your positioning. And then going super slow. Strengthening your legs when you have a knee arthritis flare can be a very slow process because, as you know, you can very easily flare up your knees. And I don't mean that you have to exercise one day and then wait a whole week to exercise again, to strength train again. No, that is not what I'm saying. To build strength, you need to strength train 2 to 3 times a week. So we're talking you need to strengthen 2 to 3 times a week, but being mindful of what you're doing. One of the biggest mistakes I see runners with knee arthritis do is they go and they lift heavy weights and they do a lot of repetitions. That is another way of loading your knees too much. It's too much. If you've never done it before, you need to do just the motion. And it may feel really dumb, like, oh my God, this is the easiest thing in the world. Why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? You're doing it to get your knee used to doing that motion. Because when you have a type of diagnosis that's very easily flared, when that bear can get very angry very easily, you want to go slow and get your body used to it. So one thing that happens with any kind of injury is if your body has had pain for so long, it sometimes gets a mixed message between your body and your brain. There's a mixed message where now normal movement, normal activity is now painful. It's a real phenomenon. And we need to make sure that your body knows, that your brain knows this new exercise that you've never done before is not a danger to your knee, to your arthritis, to your body. So going through the motion for 2 weeks to get your body used to that, because it's better to go really slow for 2 weeks than go really hard for those 2 weeks and now have to backtrack for 6. It's not going to work because now you're doing damage control for 6 weeks when you could have progressed after 2 weeks to adding a little bit of weight and then a little bit of weight and then a little bit of weight. And by those 6 weeks, now you've actually had some resistance added and your knees feel fine. And when you're strengthening for your knee arthritis, you want to make sure you're strengthening your glutes in all of the directions that your glutes need a workout. So that means strengthening in all of the directions that your glutes work. So you have your gluteus maximus, your gluteus medius, and your gluteus minimus. They all work together to do all motions of the hip. There are directions that work those glutes in their primary mover. So glute max is extension. That's a backward movement. Gluteus medius and minimus do lateral movement. They all work together to do an external rotation, internal rotation, and they even do some flexion and some adduction. So any direction your hip is going, your glutes do work. The primary directions they work are extension and that lateral or side movement. So you want to strengthen your glutes in these different directions. And you want an ASS program, ASS, activation, stability, and strength. You want to make sure that you're activating your glutes, that you're engaging them. Because if you're not actually engaging them, your body's really smart and you're going to compensate. Something else is going to pick up. So you want to activate your glutes. Then you want to make sure that they're stabilizing or stable in the position that you're working, because otherwise you can't strengthen them. So you need stability. So working stability in single leg balance, in single leg stance, just standing on one leg, because running You're always on one leg. Always on one leg or another. That's the difference between walking and running. And then working those glutes in their primary directions, so backward and sideways. And you can do that by working them against gravity. That's how you best strengthen a muscle, by working it at a 90-degree angle to gravity. So working extension by laying on your belly, working lateral movement by laying on your side. You can also lay on your back and work extension that way, like in a hip thrust or a bridge motion, so that you can, and you want to make sure that your pelvis, your hips, your legs are stable and not waving side to side while you're doing those exercises, because then you need to strengthen them with more repetition and more resistance and more weight over time, because that's how you strengthen them. Now, with knee arthritis, you may not be able to do standing exercises right away. Now, if that's the case, this is a side note, but you should be working on other ways to maintain your endurance for running other than running. Because if you can't tolerate just standing exercises with no resistance, no weight, just moving your leg, for example, and you can't tolerate that, your knee sounds like it's too flared to do running. So you should really focus on cross training, walking, riding a bike, swimming, things like that, while you calm down that knee. But that's an aside. But it does happen. I work with many clients who their knee is so flared from, let's say, a recent race that they're like, I can't even run right now. And so thinking about doing a standing strength exercise, heck no. So you may not be able to do that right away. You may have to start off with the lying exercises. Or you may be able to start off right away with the standing exercises. And that's usually how I recommend it. If you can tolerate it, start off with the standing exercises, because you're standing when you're running. So if you can start off that way, start off that way. If you can't, you can't. That's no problem. But you're working your glutes in all of the different directions, laying down, standing up, keeping those glutes active, making sure they're stabilizing, and making sure they're strengthening. If that sounds like a lot, which it probably does, because it was, and it's a podcast, you can't see the motions that I'm talking about. I can only describe them. I am hosting a free workshop on September 25th on how to build your glutes when you have knee problems. So to build up your glutes, make your workout so that you can do them without flaring up your knees. So this is all ways to work out those glutes without squats and lunges, which typically are really painful on my clients' knees in the beginning. Learning how to activate, stabilize, and strengthen so that you can have the knee relief and get stronger all at the same time, and you don't keep re-aggravating your knee. So go ahead to the show notes to register for that live free workshop. As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.